I'd like to talk about parts kits. We all know that's one way to get a lot of old Milsurp firearms that, like AK-47s, things like that, that are not available as is, and then you get a parts kit and you build a semi-automatic only firearm out of these parts kits that you can legally own. It's probably with some guns, it's the only way that you can get an example of that firearm. Okay. Now, in the old days, going back 15 years or more, there were a ton of guns that come out of Europe, and basically, as long as the receiver's cut up, you could get the parts kit with a live barrel, everything, and then fabricate a receiver or something and do your own. And there were a ton of AKs from just about every country around the globe other than the Soviet Union. Okay? And the only kits that came in were the older milled receiver ones that came out of the Middle East somewhere. They were very far and few between. The reason I'm bringing this up is for a time, the government didn't like this. It was too easy for people to build a lot of firearms with live barrels. So they passed a law that you could not import a kit with the barrel. Okay? And I don't know how many years it was, then the law ran out. Now recently, we're getting kits coming in with live barrels again. And the reason I'm bringing this up is I thought about building a parts kit, and the problem is without the live barrel and that, it's an added expense. There's a lot more to it than assembling one that has a live barrel that's headspace to the bolt and everything. If you get one without a barrel, you can get a brand new barrel, but there is some machining and some other things involved in most of them. A lot of it also depends on the parts kit. Okay? Tell you what, we'll take a look at a few of them and I'll discuss this in depth. Now, I'm not going to mention the company or price or anything like that because then YouTube will say I'm trying to sell or promote them, but just to give you a couple examples of parts kits, here's some pictures. These are mostly sub guns. Some of these interesting SIG rifles showed up, FNFALs, more sub guns, some AKs, another FN. And the prices on these, let's just say it's not like it used to be in the old days. And you can see you get offerings of all kinds of different things. A lot of them are the roller delays, AKs, and things of that nature. Now, the thing about parts kits, a lot of them you either have to bend a receiver up, like the AKs, and all of the roller delayed guns, a vast majority of them involve a jig, bending the flat, welding it, and doing a set me see. Any of the H&K line of either if you're going to build a 9mm pistol or a rifle, that has to be done. Then of course the set me L is the one that I like, and actually the reason I'm discussing this is I purchased a set me LC kit which recently became available on a couple different websites. And anybody who's into it, the sites I'm talking about. I can't promote them. I can't tell you, about them because then they'll pull the video on me. But I kind of was turned off by the kits because during the big crunch with ghost guns, there were some people out there that made jigs for bending the receivers or straightening them and that. And Another thing is a lot of people show you a build and leave out a lot of the details. Number one, because they can't specifically tell you. And number two, there's a lot more to putting together a kit than kind of the information out there. They make it look easy and just simple. It's not quite that way. Okay, unless you have tooling. And the thing is, tooling is not available. There were a lot of people that made, like say for Setme C, kits, the bending jigs, the arbor to straighten the receiver out and get it to where it's trued up better and lined up and everything. And the jigs were quite expensive. They were well made out of steel. But a lot of these places, after with the ghost guns and that, like I had videos where I'd show you how I finished 80% receivers and did some polymer 80 builds, but all of that was they threatened to shut my whole channel down and everything else. And then the ATF was hunting down people, and it was as simple as giving them the dimension from the top of the edge of an AR-15 receiver to the bottom of the pocket. Now that information can be easily found online, okay, blueprints and that. But I would get these emails and people would ask me, what is that dimension and the tolerance? And I'd say, go look it up. Because they had for a time there, if I told you verbally or in an email how to finish a kit or build an 80%, finish an 80% receiver, I could be in violation, according to the ATF. So a lot of the people that were building these jigs, and there's all kinds of firearms that come in, that Polish rack submachine gun pistol thing. There was a guy that made a jig that you could take that cut receiver and repair it and get it welded up to where you'd have a functioning receiver. Okay, he's out of business. A lot of the people that made the jigs, the good ones, okay, which were expensive, and that's another thing I'll get into, they don't make them, or they gave you the blueprints on how to make your own jig, the dimensions, how to cut it and that. Doing that, you can get in trouble. That's why you can't find that. You can find all these 3D printed jigs, pretty readily for like a C note or a little more. But you got to remember, they're plastic, okay, and you're bending steel. I don't really believe, from what I've seen and what I've seen how people try to use them, I don't believe it's going to give you a very accurate product. Okay, you'd have to tweak it and do a lot of other things to it. And probably there is ways to do things to make it, once you get the bend started, to tweak it in. But again, the problem. So parts kits, and if you are up to speed and see the cost, that's the thing. Russian parts kits were hard to find, and a bunch of them hit the streets last night. I caught the email. I tried just looking and seeing what they were offering, and I mean the things were so slow in that. When I got up this morning at the two sites that were selling them, and believe me, they were like, I think some of them were 7 C notes in that range to 8 C notes to 9. And then some that were all matching were a K for an older used Soviet gun. Granted, those kits were rare and never came in here with markings on them, Soviet made guns. They were sold out by morning. And that's an awful lot of money for an AK kit. I know AKs cost more, but to build, and you can still get receivers. There's several companies that make AK-47 receivers, so you don't have to screw around with a jig or anything. And they also make the solid steel machined ones for the older ones, because I've seen older kits come in, okay, that from the early 60s and that were on the machined solid bar stock lower AKs where the barrel would screw into the receiver. And those were relatively quite expensive, and they're pretty well used after 60 years, you know. But I was amazed that those kits sold out. All right. I found that what it used to cost for a good jig, okay, was about half a K, 5 C notes. All right. So when you get into this and you got to buy this tooling, now, like I said, a C note gets you the 3D printed plastic ones. If they work or not, I don't know. I'd rather go with something made out of steel than with the 3D printed. And there's a little bit more to doing some of these projects than people let on. Well, anyway, you figure if you're spending $5 to get the fixturing, and then you go and get the flats and everything else, you know, that's why I bought a Southern Tactical Set-Me C. Okay, I mean, there's nothing wrong with building your own gun, but the cost-wise, it's crazy. These here, you know, you're paying a K for a used parts kit. You got to go demill it, disassemble it. You got to have fixtures and jigs to set the rivets and things like that. And, you know, you can have a reman, you know, a Soviet-built gun on a legal U.S. receiver, but still, you're spending well over a K when it's all said and done. Okay, if you build it yourself or if you get a receiver that's already built, you know, that's a lot. But I kind of fell into it myself. I love my Set-Me L that I got from Mark Lamar, and I always wanted one of the Set-Me LCs. Now, I was looking at the kits when I bought it, and the kits, they were quite high, okay? And they did not have a barrel in them, all right? And then all of a sudden the other day, actually a week ago, my kit's coming, we'll do an overview of it, but they had to set me LCs with barrels. And there were two main places that had them, and I was looking at it, and in the end, with shipping, handling, and everything, it was 2C notes for the kit. So I said, you know what? Let me get it. Alright, I'll worry about that a bit later. Sure enough, it was a day and a half, those kits sold out. I think there's only one source for a flat. I can rent the jig, and I did ask them, would you be assembling any of these kits for people or offering a service of assembling the kits? And I was told, no, that's not going to happen, but you can buy parts. We do sell parts if you wish to build one. So I have to look at it. We're going to review the kit and take a look at the kit. I'm not one for accumulating kits, but this one to me is rare enough that even if I question the build, we're going to talk about that more in detail. I just set it aside and see what happens later. Then I was tempted. I said, you know what, yeah, if I'm going to do this one, let me look into the other ones, maybe build a Set-Me C or an HK or that. And that's where I bought I bought one of those Portuguese ones from Century Arms, and what I ended up paying for it when I caught it on a sale, you know, it would cost me more to try to build one, okay, than just buy theirs. So that's where I kind of weighed the differences in some of these kits, you know, I didn't get into. Granted, there are a lot of other different firearm kits out there that you can make some pretty wild stuff with that is not available. In other words, you would have to build your own and have a unique gun. But, you know, my age and what my issues, you know, taking on a lot of work, a lot of money doing that. And you really can't show your work off on YouTube because they'll shut the channel down. You know, half of the thing is if I could show people on YouTube like I've done over the years, then it would be worthwhile for me to do it. But obviously you can't. So that's my thought on kits. But I mean, I didn't believe, you know, you're approaching probably 1K, and I mean they were all sold out within 12 hours, 13 hours. All of them, all those kits were sold out. There's still more. There's still FN kits, which even though they're used, they're actually one of them SIG kits would be cool to build if you could get somebody either to build it or somebody that fabricates semi-automatic receivers. And probably there is certain things that have to be modified to a lot of the components so they cannot fire full auto. But it would be neat if there's somebody would, you know, if you send them a kit, they'd assemble you a gun. But I'll keep track of it. Put down in the comments what you think. But kits are a new thing now. We'll see how that all works.